The curious one.
The remnant.
Spiritual, psychological, and emotional pain arises whenever the illusion of separation obscures reality. Last week, Dr. Laheka brought this truth into stark focus as she reflected on the costs of illusion of separation and our relationship with our earth. Now, from the macro to the micro. Today, we're taking a look at another split between spirit and matter, specifically regarding, now hold yourself, sex and money.
Oh, God.
Tell me more.
Now, it's been said that sex and money are two topics never to be spoken from the pulpit. When I heard this, I thought, who better to talk about sex and money than me? I'm a sex therapist and the treasurer of Unity in Greensboro. I deal with sex and money all the time. So today, it's all about sex and money. The new S&M. By the way, there will not be a PowerPoint today because, as my 5-year-old son would say, that would be highly inappropriate. Since these topics are controversial, I'll ease you into this message by focusing on the least titillating of the two. The one you're more likely to talk about in polite company. The one that feels more familiar to you on, say, once a week or once every other week, or in my case, once a month. Today I'll start with sex. Do I see storming? I promise I'll keep it PG-13. People of God, as Jesus and the 12 disciples.
Okay. Oh, nice. That's pretty good.
Be here all week. So we talk about sex, or I'm sorry, the Freudian slip already. It's bound to happen. We talk about God being everywhere equally present. Well, if we embrace that truth, then we must accept that God is in your bedroom. One more thing we must agree upon is that humans, by and large, are stunted when it comes to acknowledging and realizing the creative force of the universe. This creative force manifests itself in many ways, and one such way is our sexual drive. Unfortunately, throughout history, labels have been, shall I say, thrust upon us that sex is evil, or sexual expression is sinful, limited in purpose only for procreation, and so on. How many of you are familiar with the series Conversations with God? A lot of us. Well, in Volume 1, Neil Donald Walsh wrote, "From the voice of God, your attitudes about sex form a microcosm of your attitudes about life." Your attitudes about sex form a microcosm about your attitudes about life. How do you view your life? How do you approach life? How might this reflect your expression of your sexuality? Recall that you are a conduit for the universe to express itself. When you hold on to restricted views of sexuality, we stunt the sexual force of the universe. We inhibit its natural flow. So around 4 years ago, soon after my marriage ended, I saw a therapist to help me through that dark night of the soul. And as I sat on the proverbial couch, I said, you know, I don't exude sexual energy. And she said, you're right, you don't. Thank God for the truth, right? At that time, I was particularly emotionally, psychologically, and sexually restricted. To my Freudian sense, you could say I was anally retentive. For years, I hadn't recognized what author and spiritual teacher Mayuri Onerheim wrote. The source of creation is the universal marriage between creative force of the universe and the heart of the universe. And we each obtain this universal marriage. This is the mystery of the body. Parenthetically, did you know, just recently learned this, that the Buddha said enlightenment is found in the vagina? True. Now, I didn't mean that literally. Although some of you may disagree. But put into context, he was talking to his monks, which were male, who were male, and inviting them to achieve balance and harmony by tapping into their feminine energy. Within unity, we often say that God is love. And Walsh tells us that sex is an extraordinary expression of love. Love of another, love of self, love of life. In other words, when we align our beingness, our natural inclination is to love sex, sexuality, sensuality. Not because it feels good, but because it's an expression of the creative force. Now keep in mind that this creative force of the universe knows no age limits, nor concerns itself with whether you're single or in a relationship. Most importantly, the creative force is available to us all of the time, and without exception. And yet we often find ourselves falling short of accepting this truth about the infinitely abundant creative force. For example, some may think that lack consciousness only applies to money, and I'll get to that soon. But lack consciousness can also apply to sexuality and love. Single people may feel that all the good ones are taken. Or they believe that after a certain age, it's much harder to meet someone. Or they feel that they are to settle for someone who is not quite what they want. Wow, it's pretty loud. Or they may fall in love with someone who can't love them back and feel that this is the end, that they will never fall in love again because love is limited to just one person or one chance. When it's gone, it's gone. Whatever happened to there's plenty of fish in the sea, or drop that zero and get yourself a hero. You've seen the exception, though. You've seen the exception. Those men and women who aren't deluded with the illusion of separation, but who are in total alignment with their sexuality and express the creative force with ease. They epitomize the line from Bette Midler's song, "To Deserve You." I've seen so many golden women. When they walk, their feet don't touch the ground. What's your reaction when you come face to face with these golden people? Are you drawn to them? Or do you notice an inner resistance? I'm captivated by their energy. They're magical in their sexual expression. I'm in awe of them. And yet, I'm one of those who feels that inner resistance. That part of me that isn't quite so sure what to do with myself in that energy. So what is the difference between them and me? One word. Ego. The ego, the source of all illusion of separation, exacerbates that split between the root chakra and the heart chakra. Without that split, consciousness brings forth our true nature and expresses our beingness and belongingness. Mystic poet Kabir wrote, "How could I ever express how blessed I feel to revel in such vast ecstasy in my own body? This is the music of soul and soul meeting." It's at this moment, soul-to-soul meeting, that we become more fully aware of our natural integrity and dignity. As Maori wrote, and with maturity we respect ourselves more. And because the veil of separation has fallen, we respect others as well. Now, what does all of this have to do with money? Perhaps the more controversial of the two. Just as sex is an expression of the creative force of the universe, so is money. And many of the aforementioned spiritual and metaphysical concepts apply. Charles Fillmore, in Keep a True Lent, provided important facts about money for us to consider. Number one, money represents a mind substance of unlimited abundance and accessibility. And that this mind substance cannot safely be hoarded or selfishly used by anyone. Number two, money is a living magnet attracting good of every kind to those who possess it. Three, those who train their thoughts to depend on this mind substance for supply of all kinds never lack. Four, if the mind is free from attachment to money or love of it, and lovingly concentrated on the divine substance, there is never failure in the demonstration. Some of you know I grew up on welfare in central Pennsylvania. Lack consciousness, in retrospect, pervaded the life of my family. I was trained to believe that there was never enough. When I was, 8 or 9, it was late at night, and I heard a commotion down in the basement. So I walked down there, and I could see my mother and her partner going through garbage bags full of clothes and stuff. Where did this bounty come from? As it turned out, it was stolen from a Salvation Army drop box. My parents did the best they could do with the level of consciousness that they had. Little did they know, however, that the lack of consciousness is easily passed down from one generation to the next. I've suffered from a bad case of that for years. And Charles Fillmore also wrote, when you think of your money, which is visible, as something directly attached to an invisible source that is giving or withholding according to your thought, you have the key to all riches and the reason for all lack. In short, whenever we take what is not our own, or what is not needed or offered, we reinforce lack consciousness. That extra napkin, those sugar packets. With money, this manifests as FOMO. Anybody here of FOMO? What is it?
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. I have to have because others have, and they must have better lives because of it. In short, it's not money, but the love of money that's the root of all evil. That is to say, when one sees money with lack consciousness, one becomes misaligned and acts in ways inconsistent with Christ consciousness. And what's most important is that this is a work in progress for me. And I suspect some of us today. So I must meet my mind chatter that expresses lack consciousness and its offspring, fear and anxiety, with compassion, acceptance, and understanding. I benefit no one if I harm myself with judgment, shame, and guilt, and neither do you. So a message on sex and money must also include a discussion about desire. Abraham Hicks has this to say: if someone is not receiving what they are asking for, it is not because there is a shortage of resources. It can only be that the person holding the desire is out of alignment with their own interests, their own request. There is no shortage. There is no lack. There is no competition for resources. There is only the allowing or the disallowing of that which you are asking for. In other words, allowing or disallowing of that which you desire. Well, what is the nature of the desire that Abraham Hicks references? Buddhist teachings identify two types of desire, healthy and unhealthy. Buddhist monk and psychologist Jack Kornfield says this about desire: desire can lead us from sublime pleasure or raging addiction, from bodily survival to spiritual longing. Desire drives mushroom hunting and investment banking, Sufi dancing, and rock and roll. The nature of desire, therefore, becomes an essential consideration when contemplating sex, money, and spirituality. More, to experience deeper spiritual freedom and balance, we must be willing to study and work with desire, and on whether one is prone to indulgence or the suppression of desire. For me, I've always fell in the latter group, suppression of desire. Unhealthy desire occurs whenever we're confusing our beingness with the object of desire. Whenever we hold the belief that our worth is dependent on the object. Said differently, whether it's the accumulation of things, people, or experiences, or the suppression of wanting things, people, or experiences. Because of the suppression is there because of the faulty belief that having them may be too costly. Unhealthy desire is a direct line to suffering. Kornfield describes his experience taking a vow of celibacy as part of his monastic studies. He surprised himself when during his meditation how desire bubbled up and manifested in intense sexual fantasies. With greater study of his feelings, he found that insecurity and a needy kind of emptiness were there underneath it all. In short, his desire manifested because of discontent, not because of wanting fulfillment. By the way, loneliness is a fascinating emotion, because we can feel lonely regardless of the number of people around us. The Buddhist view is that the feeling of loneliness isn't universally a bad thing. It can also be the feeling of Buddha nature. In other words, loneliness may not be a lacking of something, but rather the aching fulfillment of our open, raw, caring nature. That is healthy desire. Healthy desire manifests as healthy energies of dedication and commitment. Kornfield went on to say, if the goal exists to prove that we are worthy, to cover our insecurity, or to conquer others, it will ultimately prove unfulfilling and come to an unhappy end. And yet the very same activity can be done in a healthy way with dedication, commitment, and love. Our views on sex and money point to our philosophy of living. These expressions of the creative force of the universe share an important quality. They are forms of energy exchange. And when sex and money are doing their thing, combined with healthy desire, they are following their prescribed course to be in flow. So, may you wink at yourself every time you pass a mirror. May you greet signs of lack consciousness, be it within yourself, your partner, or friends, with compassion, understanding, and love. And may you find that the will to turn these truths about the universal forces of abundance guide you back to new thought. And so it is.
So it is.